Welcome everyone to our informational webinar for the hydrogen economy class that we are starting in just 2 weeks' time now. This event is designed just to provide information for anyone who needed to know a little bit more about what we're going to be doing. So without further ado, let me introduce myself. First of all, I'm Alan Rossiter at UH Energy, the University of Houston. And I guess I would describe myself as the coordinator for the course. I will be doing a little bit of the lecturing, but we have a number of other people participating in that, some of whom are in the meeting at the moment. And I will call on them to talk a little bit later. But first of all, I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of what the course is going to be about. I guess even before that, let's just talk a little bit about housekeeping for this meeting, for this webinar. Please stay muted with video off unless you are actually presenting. And then for Q&A, there is a chat box, of course, so please use that for your Q&A items. And we will read what's in the Q&A and address your questions as we go. All right, so why are we talking about hydrogen? Why are we running this program, in particular, the hydrogen economy? Why is it important right now? The figure on the right-hand side of the screen is one that you will see, or at least various versions of which you will see many times over when you come and join our course, the hydrogen economy. In fact, I suspect you will probably be dreaming about it before we're done. And that's not because there are no other graphics to show, but just that we will be revisiting this from a number of different directions repeatedly through the course. What that diagram shows is the potential future for hydrogen. And you will see on the left-hand side of the diagram, essentially looking at production, and on the right-hand side, uses. Today, hydrogen is a not insignificant contributor to the energy economy. Roughly 4% of the final energy use in the United States is, or actually worldwide, is based on hydrogen in one form or another. Most of that, though, is really for industrial applications. And only a relatively small amount of hydrogen is used strictly for energy purposes. But going into the future, there is good reason to believe, or certainly there are projections that would suggest that hydrogen production could increase by a factor of anything up to tenfold over the next 30 to 50 years. So potentially it could become a much larger player in the overall energy mix. And furthermore, the applications potentially could expand considerably. So whereas now very little hydrogen is actually used for heating, it could become a major heating medium in the not too distant future. And furthermore, it could be used in producing other forms of renewable or synthetic fuels as one of the components going into them. Another very important potential use is energy storage. And so that would involve using hydrogen as a means of storing energy long-term when we have intermittent sources of power, like a lot of renewables, like a lot of things like solar and wind. Hydrogen could be a mechanism of storing energy in order to balance out energy supplies with those intermittent sources. There are also potential applications of hydrogen in stationary power. In other words, using hydrogen either at a grid scale as an energy source or localized uses, for example, in individual buildings, using hydrogen to provide power as well as heat in some of those situations. And another use of hydrogen with which many of you will be familiar is transportation. There are already uses of hydrogen in hydrogen vehicles, and hydrogen forklift trucks have also been very important in recent years. And so there are already applications there, but that is another potential major growth area for hydrogen. And the industrial applications that I mentioned earlier are likely to become even more important as we go forward in time as well. So there are certainly very credible scenarios for the future that say hydrogen could be a major part of the energy economy going forward. Well, that's just a very brief background on the reasons we're interested in hydrogen and also the sort of scope that we'll be addressing during the course. What I wanted to do is to say just a little bit more about the logistics and some of the approaches that we'll be taking during the course. And so we'll start then with the timeline. So we start on June 14th, just under 2 weeks away, and we run through August the 18th. And the classes will be run Monday and Wednesday evenings, 6 till 8:30 p.m. One of the very key things about this program is that it is multidisciplinary. So I'm a chemical engineer by background. I tend to think in terms of technologies, but we will not only be looking at this technologically. We will have people talking about policy issues. We'll have people talking about business, multiple different dimensions that we'll be looking at. And that's one reason why I told you would see that diagram in the previous example many times over, because we'll be looking at things from different directions. The program will be extremely interactive. There will be plenty of opportunity for Q&A, so you'll get a chance to talk to the instructors and to share ideas with other people on the course. And also, I should point out that the instructors are not just one group, but actually two significant segments. Some of the instructors are leaders from industry, and Joe was one you've already met, so those of you who joined early. And also, there'll be instructors based here in the University of Houston. The course itself breaks down into 3 main modules, or digital badges, as we call them. The first one of those is hydrogen production. The second one deals with hydrogen transportation, safety and use. And by this, where I say transportation here, I mean, how do you move hydrogen around rather than can you use hydrogen for transportation purposes like vehicles? Then in the third module, the third badge, we will look at commercial opportunities for hydrogen. And also in that third module, we will have a capstone project, which is an opportunity for you to pull together all that you've seen in the course in a project, looking at developing a business case for deployment of hydrogen in some particular commercial application. I think there's already a link in the chat that gives you the website for more details of the program and also for the application form to complete. And I think there may also be one for the instructors, but certainly those are additional information that you can get if you want to know more about this program. And so I realize what I've talked about there is an extremely high level, and we're very open to questions. And I would remind you then, if you want to send questions, please put your question in the Q&A. And also at this point, let me see if we have questions yet. We do not. But let me invite maybe Joe, if you'd like to say a few more words about the program. So let me introduce actually Joe Powell, who is one of our presenters, many years with Shell as chief chemical engineer, and very much a gentleman with many years of expertise in hydrogen.
Well, thank you, Alan. Yeah, this is Joe Powell. I retired as Chief Scientist, Chemical Engineering for Shell at the end of December of last year, and was also chair of the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Advisory Committee for the DOE. So had quite a bit of involvement both on the DOE side from the industry advisor set, but also at Shell in terms of commercializing the hydrogen opportunity. So it's really exciting times. We've been talking about a hydrogen economy for multiple decades now. You may be aware of some of the inroads it made into the early space program, but now really looking at can it be that vector for decarbonization, and quite a bit on the table in terms of how far will or may it not go. So we'll try to have a very candid conversation during this course of what that looks like, really from 2 elements. One being to teach enough about the technology so that whether you're a engineer or a technology major or a business major, you'll understand the essential elements that have to be developed and come into play, and how it competes with electrification. So I think electrification will happen. The question is, to what extent will the hydrogen economy and where is it most valuable to augment electricity as a low carbon vector going forward? I'm really excited about some of the speakers we have for the course. So we have Neha Rastagi from the DOE early on in the program to explain the work over the decades and their view of what's emerging and going forward. And then the last of the invited speakers being the CTO, Tim Cortes from Plug Power. That's the entity that's essentially the Elon Musk of the hydrogen fuel cell side of things. And this is how you're getting your goods coming out of the warehouses from Home Depot to Amazon and Walmart and etc. So quite a success story in terms of capturing the forklift market for the fuel cell vehicles, and you'll understand why that is as a function of this course. So as Alan mentioned, we'll start with an overview of the opportunity space, how hydrogen is produced, how it's distributed, and then have this final badge on the opportunity space. And in the middle of that, we'll have that Shark Tank-like project where you and some colleagues can work together and come up with your own value proposition, basis your learnings, and then share that with the other participants so we can learn from each other in terms of what are the really good opportunity spaces out there for hydrogen. So I think it'll be really exciting and interactive, and look forward to participating. So Alan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Helps to unmute yourself sometimes.
There we go.
Yeah, so responding to your question, Christine, no, we're keeping this pretty informal. I figured I needed a few slides to get it kicked off, but I know one or two of the other presenters, one or two of the other instructors for the course had said they would like to share a few words, but they didn't need slides. So just a reminder on the screen, if you're not a speaker, if you're not a presenter, then please stay muted and video off. And although we may invite some direct verbal input in a few minutes, but for the moment, please keep yourself muted and video off unless you're one of the instructors. Chuck, I think you had said you would like to share a little bit as well. Chuck Connell is a colleague of mine here at UH with a great background in energy and for a number of years at the Department of Energy as well. So Chuck, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I guess the most important thing I'd like to share with everybody is it'll be an opportunity for you to take a lot of the paradigms that we all hear of these days in terms of the energy transition. The best way to approach solutions, looking at it, analyzing it, and being able to understand what those competitive alternatives are. And frankly, in the process, perhaps for yourself, bust a few of the myths that might be out there in terms of what people are saying and how they're approaching things. So this hydrogen value chain really extending from very small uses in various applications, specialty uses, all the way up to world scale supplies for refineries and petrochemical facilities, and all the important attributes of hydrogen in terms of purity and pressure and impact and what those competitive alternatives look like. And yes, Alan, I think that's the beauty of these courses, is that the students and the learners will have an opportunity to ask the questions and very frequently interact with many of those that are presenting, calling on some of that industrial background and know-how from the marketplace. That's what it's really all about. So nothing more to add, only enthusiasm about seeing you soon.
Great, thanks so much, Chuck. And I saw Greg Bean on as well. Greg, can we introduce you? Greg is at the business school, at the Barber College School of Business, and I believe is your title officially director of GEMI, the Gutierrez Energy Management Institute, right?
Yes, yeah, and good afternoon. Thanks, thanks, Alan. So again, I'm Greg Bean. I'm the executive director of the Gutierrez Energy Management Institute, and we manage all of the energy activities in the Bauer College of Business. So that's all the curriculum as well as events and other things that we have. We actually, in terms of our energy-related activities, got involved in starting to think about hydrogen about 2 years ago when we had a symposium on hydrogen. It was in the early days of people starting to think about, in the current energy transition, what the role of hydrogen might be. And that really is kind of accelerated over the last couple of years as we understand more about the nature of the likely nature of the energy transition and hydrogen's potential role. And I think from a business perspective, in terms of what the opportunities are, I guess there's a couple of things that I find really interesting and that we'll talk about in the course. Hydrogen is going to be important in decarbonizing some hard to decarbonize and use sectors, things like heavy duty transportation, several key industrial processes that are big consumers of electricity. Also, something that is starting to become apparent is that while renewable energy will be generated more widely, and that wind and solar energy resources are more widely distributed around the world than fossil fuels are, there still will be some international trade in energy-related products that are going to be required. And hydrogen is potentially very interesting energy carrier for part of that international trade. And that's particularly important for us here in Houston, because not only do we have the world's largest existing hydrogen network and infrastructure, which is today largely to support the petroleum products and petrochemical industry, but as fossil fuel use declines over the long term, things like hydrogen and hydrogen-derived commodities have the potential to replace some of the exports that we have in the Houston area. Houston is by far the largest exporter of petroleum and petrochemical products. And as some of those decline in demand, traditional products, there's an opportunity for them to be replaced by new businesses that are exporting energy in the form of hydrogen and related products. So from a business perspective, I think it's very, very interesting. So really looking forward to the course.
Thanks so much, Greg. And I have to say, for those of you on the call with us, Greg has been one of the people who's been instrumental in helping me as a mere chemical engineer to begin to think a little bit in business terms as well. So, so if you're in the same situation as me, wanting to broaden your horizons and understand the diversity of issues involved here, because this is not a simple subject by any means, then I think you have a great team here to help you get oriented to all of that. I'm not seeing, maybe I missed it, but I'm not seeing any of the other instructors in the audience. If there is anyone there who would like to talk from among the instructors, let me know. In addition to that, though, I would also say if there are any of you who would like to ask questions and have not got around to doing it through chat, since we have a relatively small group, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's also fair game at this point. So you can ignore the instruction in the housekeeping slide that's on the screen right now. So invite any questions. So I guess that probably means we did a great job of explaining everything, I hope. Give one more moment for any questions, but just moving on to the next slide, which basically just says thanks for joining us. If you are interested in finding out more, as I mentioned, we have the website. And there is a link in the chat which you can find which directs you to that. So please go there for more information. And of course, there's the application form there as well if you would like to sign up. And we certainly look forward to seeing many of you when we start the course just under 2 weeks from now. So I guess we finished a little bit under our allotted half hour, but if there are no more questions, let's close it there. So thank you all for joining.